Is a 2024 outfielder from the San Diego Padres who had quite the season the perfect fit to figure out this corner outfield problem for the Pittsburgh Pirates?
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates. Thank you all for always tuning into the show, as you always do on YouTube and all of your audio platforms, because it is free and available to you whenever it does drop. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of the Locked On Pirates podcast, bringing you your news, analysis, opinions, and reactions to everything going on in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates from a lifelong fan to lifelong fans just like you. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season. I took a little bit of a break through Christmas. Hope you guys all had a wonderful Christmas and a happy holidays. New Year's is right around the corner, so little programming note, we'll have a show tomorrow, obviously, on top of this show on Sunday afternoon. We'll have a New Year's Eve show where we talk about New Year's resolutions for this Pittsburgh Pirates team, as well as a show on New Year's Day. So be prepared for all of that coming to your feeds, probably in the mid-afternoon, early evening on those days. New Year's Eve will likely be an earlier one, as well as New Year's Day, or New Year's Eve will be a later one. New Year's Day will likely be a late or early one. There we go. We got it figured out. But those will all be coming your way here on the Locked On Pirates podcast as we are on our off-season schedule. And with this offseason, it's still been relatively quiet on the Pirates front. There's a lot that you wonder about and a lot that we can point at directly and say, okay, this team has to absolutely upgrade at certain spots. They already kind of did that with Spencer Horwitz in that trade with the Cleveland Guardians to acquire him. He's a high contact first baseman. He's controllable. He's a guy that you're going to look at and say, okay, this guy can be here for a while. Now, I think a lot of the focus from myself as well as the fans on this show who love to comment on it at all times have shifted their focus to say, okay, the Pirates absolutely need corner outfield help. You have Bryan Reynolds out there right now, but we've heard the rumblings of him being a first baseman. We've heard those rumblings for a good portion of the offseason and even part of the season last year, where people were just suggesting that the Pirates would, in fact, do that. Now, is it going to be a full-time move? We don't really know that yet. We don't really know how much Bryan Reynolds will be playing that position, especially with the Horwitz acquisition. So we don't really know how much that's going to happen. So you could still probably include Bryan Reynolds in that left field conversation, obviously the position that he's played for quite some time now. But when you move to right field, it gets really dicey. I mean, you're looking at Joshua Palacios, Jack Sawinski, Billy Cook, and Nick York are options that they acquired from last year. And I think the Pirates do want to show a willingness to still have those guys in the fold, which they absolutely should. But I do think that a lot of people, including myself, want to see the Pirates bring in somebody that is somewhat of a known commodity, somebody that can come in and help offensively, somebody that can come in and, give a spark to that offense in the outfield outside of Bryan Reynolds and now, of course, O'Neal Cruz, who we include in center field in that conversation. But it's something that you wonder about, and you start to look at where the market is and how things are shaping out. And we've seen Tyler O'Neill go off the board, so it's kind of shrunk a little bit as far as everything has gone, especially after Juan Soto signed with the New York Mets, because a lot of those teams that missed out on the Juan Soto sweepstakes started to do things like the New York Yankees, of course, acquiring Cody Bellinger, a player that I wanted the Pirates to at least look in on. And then you looked at the first base market really starting to shrink as well. So you're seeing all these moves be made. The Pirates have kind of sat back and just watched the market fold out the way it has. And there's one player that I've had my eye on now for a couple of weeks. And he's a player that we haven't really heard a lot about, but he had a phenomenal 2024. He was an all-star in 2024 for that right fact. And that was Jerickson Profar. Now, Jerickson Profar is a player that you can look at the 2024 he had and say, okay, how much of this was sustainable? How much of this is just a one-off, one-year kind of thing? But our own Javier Reyes, who works over at Locked On Padres, also does work with Just Baseball, had a whole story about Jerickson Profar, literally titled, "Why isn't Jerickson Profar getting more interest in free agency?" And it's an interesting question because you're looking at a guy who had a 4.3 FWAR last year, a 139 WRC plus, obviously the best of his career. You look at the slash line, though, where things just continue to look good on paper for Jerickson Profar. Javi went as far as to compare 2023 Cody Bellinger to 2024 Jerickson Profar. And I thought it was a great comparison because a lot of people, kind of wrote off Cody Bellinger. And then in 2023, he had a phenomenal season, 31.4% hard hit rate. Obviously, the XWOBA was a 327, the walk rate 7.2, and the chase rate of 31%. So you could look at those numbers and say, yeah, for Bellinger, those might have been one-offs. And Bellinger's still a very good outfielder. He's still a very good player that I thought would have checked a ton of boxes for this Pirates team, and I think checks a ton of boxes for the New York Yankees. But then you look at Jerickson Profar's numbers in comparison to Cody Bellinger, and he had a 44.4% hard hit rate. The WOBA was 365 with a 364 XWOBA, walk rate nearly 12% at 11.4, and a chase rate of 21%. So a 10% lower chase rate. The walk rate was about 4% higher. And then the XWOBA was much higher than what you were looking at from Cody Bellinger. Now, there's a lot to like here. Again, Javi touches on his hard hit rate being 10%, going up by 10%. Exit velocity was sitting around 91.1 miles per hour on average. Yeah, the guy's a patient hitter. He's a switch hitter. He could slot into right field right away. And I think right field would work well for a player like Jerickson Profar because the right field in PNC Park, I think, is a lot easier to manage than left field. And Jerickson Profar, I think, that is his one major gripe, is that defensively, Jerickson Profar is just not a good defender whatsoever. I mean, his DRS last year was horrible. He can play multiple outfield positions, but you do wonder, okay, when you're looking at a guy that has a negative 24 outs above average, are you getting a designated hitter or are you getting somebody that you can at least try to play in the outfield? But I do think at this point of where the Pirates are and at the stage they're at, you do have to start kind of accepting that some of these players that you want, like a Alex Verdugo, or in my case, a Jerickson Profar, are not going to be plus defenders. They're not going to be players that you look at and say, okay, you're getting a 5-tool plus DRS defender that's also having numbers like Profar had last year. You're just not going to get that very often. So if you're okay with accepting that Jerickson Profar in right field is going to be a negative defensively, but has the opportunity to be an absolute positive offensively, I think right now, folks, you have to be okay with accepting that. And I think as far as the fit is concerned, he's a switch hitter that you would add into the lineup so you could play him every day. Right field, again, to me, at PNC Park is a much better ballpark to play that position in, and Profar can play that position. He absolutely can. It's just going to be the fact that he's not going to be at even an average defender at it. He's going to have his struggles out there. But with the numbers that I suggested and with what I just threw at you with the WRC plus and the XWOBA and the hard hit rate and the chase rate, it's hard not to say that he wouldn't be a perfect fit. And on top of that, and like Javi was saying, he's just not really getting the attention that you would think a player like Jerickson Profar with those numbers would have. So right now they're projecting 3 years, $48 million. I don't know if that's out of the Pirates' realm of possibility, but with the limitations that I've seen on just even anybody really even reporting anything about Jerickson Profar, maybe that number could come down. Maybe the Pirates are more comfortable with a 2-year deal with Profar. I'm seeing as Profar, I believe, is already 32 years of age. He's not one of these guys that you're going to be looking at and saying, okay, he's an outfielder we can have for the next 5 or 6 years, but he is an outfielder that you can slot in, that you know you're going to get offensive production out of based off of the 2024 numbers that I personally believe are sustainable. Now, I don't think you're going to see those exact numbers come out of Profar in 2024, but I don't think you're going to see such a massive drop-off from those numbers that you're going to look back and say, okay, why in the world would the Pirates even do this? Why would anybody even do this? I think Profar is an offensive threat. I think you could get him in that potentially $10 to $12 million range per year, 2 years, 24 million, maybe even 30 million at 15 a year. I think is something that could be beneficial to the Pittsburgh Pirates. And it also allows you to kind of ease in a Billy Cook, ease in a Nick York, and you could figure out what you have in those guys with Brian Reynolds moving to first base without really sacrificing giving up so much offensive firepower in the outfield by moving Reynolds to first occasionally. You would then have Jerickson Profar and O'Neal Cruz out there to kind of carry the offensive load while you're still kind of figuring out what you have in Billy Cook and Nick York and even a Jack Sawinski, who I don't think they want to give up on yet. So I think that he just checks a lot of boxes to the point where you could have offensive sustainability while also still being able to check out some of these young players as well, and have the ability to move Brian Reynolds to first if you absolutely want to do that. So I do think Profar is one of those players that the Pirates should have their targets on, because right now, again, it just doesn't seem like a lot of teams are really in on Profar. It doesn't really seem like he's a hot commodity on this free agent market, even though I would argue of what's left, I think that he should be up there. I mean, you're looking at guys like Anthony Santander, Pete Alonso, and Alex Bregman. I think Profar's offensive numbers were right there with those. Now, they're not up there, but it's not a massive fall off either. So I do think Profar, I don't know if I want to go as far as saying he's the perfect fit, but he definitely would be a massive upgrade from what the Pirates currently have and would check a lot of boxes in the process. I also want to talk today about something that we heard about a little bit after winter meetings that happened at winter meetings, and that was a potential Jared Jones trade to the Boston Red Sox. We're going to discuss that in depth in a minute here on Locked On Pirates. Today's episode is brought to you by Rocket Money. Cancel your unwanted subscriptions today and go to rocketmoney.com/locked on, because did Rocket Money help you find any subscriptions you forgot about or that you were paying for twice? That definitely happened to me, and I had a few subscriptions that I didn't even realize I was still paying for, and Rocket Money made it so easy to track them all down. It's like really having a personal assistant for your finances. Rocket Money is a personal finance app that helps you find and cancel your unwanted subscriptions, monitors your spending, and helps lower your bills so you can grow your savings. It brings everything together in one place, whether it's subscriptions, your spending habits, or even the goals you want to hit this year. Rocket Money has over 5 million users and has saved a total of $500 million in canceled subscriptions, saving members up to $740 a year when using all the app premium features. For me, I didn't realize that I still had a Paramount Plus account while my parents had one that I could use. So Rocket Money helped me cancel that and save about a good $12 a month, which doesn't sound like a lot, but folks, it adds up. So cancel your unwanted subscriptions and reach your financial goals faster with Rocket Money. Go to rocketmoney.com/locked on today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked on. rocketmoney.com/locked on to cancel your unwanted subscriptions today. That's rocketmoney.com/locked on. And welcome back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network. After listening to this show on Sunday, December 29th, make sure you go listen to Locked On MLB with Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully, as he's covering everything you need to know in the world of baseball in the offseason, because, folks, we're just under 90 days away from opening day, which means spring training is closer. Pitchers and catchers reporting is a lot closer than that. So before you know it, we're going to be right back in the swing of things in season, talking about Pirates baseball. And one of the things that I think a lot of people just kind of assumed going into 2025 was that Jared Jones was going to be a part of this rotation. But we had that bombshell report that came out that the Pirates were surprisingly willing to listen to offers on both Mitch Keller and Jared Jones. Now, if you want to improve your offense with financial restrictions, that's how you have to get kind of creative. You have to move on from a strength, and pitching obviously is the strength of this team right now with Paul Skeens, Mitch Keller, Jared Jones. You looked at Luis Ortiz, who was traded to add a bat, and Spencer Horwitz. You still have Bailey Falter in the fold. You have Bubba Chandler, who we're going to talk about later on the show. You have a bunch of prospects behind them still that a lot of people in the organization and the fan base have very high hopes for. But Jared Jones, I think, was one of those guys where you just kind of felt that he was untouchable. And I'm not against the idea of trading Jared Jones if the return makes sense. And that's where you get into this Red Sox report that came out a little bit after winter meetings, and MLB trade rumors discussed it. It was discussed in a lot of different avenues. So something obviously was there. Now, we don't know the extent of how far the Red Sox went to really discuss this trade. We don't really know how much was talked about with this deal. We don't know if there ever really was even a deal on the table, but I think it's noteworthy that something was discussed and then also reported that the Pirates may be willing to do this. Now, to preface all this and to go ahead and say, okay, let's put a pin in this. This was all kind of before they traded Luis Ortiz for Spencer Horwitz. So take it with a grain of salt, because I don't know if the Pirates are going to be willing to move on from 2 starters that were in their 2024 rotation for bats. Now, I think I would be okay with it depending on the plan with Bubba Chandler, depending on their plan as far as maybe going to go sign a veteran starter to replace a guy like Jared Jones or to replace a guy like Luis Ortiz, but we just don't know where that plan is. But as far as getting with this report, I mean, the Red Sox have been a team that have made it no secret at all that they want pitching. They've apparently been linked to Luis Castillo from the Seattle Mariners, who, much like the Pittsburgh Pirates, have a very solid starting rotation that they could move on from to improve their offense. And you're looking right now at what they've done. They've already acquired Garrett Crochet. They have a Walker Buehler, a Patrick Sandoval. So they've went out of their way to really improve this rotation, but it doesn't seem like they want to stop. And Jared Jones would be a massive commodity to this team, and he would be a massive commodity really to any team. You're looking at a 23-year-old who, if it wasn't for Paul Skeens, would probably have been more so in the Rookie of the Year conversation, but Paul Skeens took over that spotlight when he debuted on May 11th. But Jared Jones had a very solid rookie year as well. You saw some of those signs of fatigue late in the season, but as far as a rookie season goes, Jared Jones was phenomenal, and he's only going to get better, presumably. So you look at that from the Red Sox standpoint, and you say, okay, they've already acquired Garrett Crochet. They've already acquired a Patrick Sandoval. They've already acquired a Walker Buehler. So they went out of their way to already improve this rotation, but they could improve it further with a player like Jones. And throughout this, I mean, you look at what's been going on and who's been talked about here. I mean, you could think about a Jarren Duran. One of the players I wanted them to really go after before they traded for Spencer Horwitz, I think it's less likely now, would have been Tristan Casas, who I think would have just been a phenomenal addition for this team. But you start to wonder, okay, then you look at some of their prospects. You have Christian Campbell, Marcelo Meyer, Roman Anthony. Those are guys that would be commodities here as offensive prospects that could be very, very good. Now, I do think that my mindset, though, on a potential Jared Jones trade to Boston or a Jared Jones trade in general, is that I want a controllable, known commodity, at least. That's where I think you get into the Jarren Duran conversation, and you say, okay, if you're starting the conversation with Duran, I think you have a good starting point. But then I do think in the Red Sox case, they would have to go further by probably including a Christian Campbell or one of their top 10 prospects, because we are talking about Jones being the kind of player that he is, controllable, only going to presumably get better, just had a great rookie season and would just fit into that Red Sox fold immediately. I mean, that Red Sox rotation would be one of the best in baseball, arguably, if they traded for Jared Jones. And I do think that what you're thinking of here, if this was to happen, is that you would see some younger players with control moving around. And it would kind of just be one of those swaps that you see where it's like, okay, we have Jarren Duran, who's a very good player, but you need outfield help. Meanwhile, we need pitching help. So then you're just basically swapping strengths to fill weaknesses. And I don't know if that's where you want to go with this. But then you go into the Mitch Keller side of things where we add another layer to this. I don't know how much you have to give up on top of giving up Keller to get a player of Jarren Duran's ceiling. I don't know how much you would have to give up to get a Tristan Casas type. Spencer Horwitz obviously was, not that. He's not that, but he's still a fine player. but Luis Ortiz was all you had to give up. And we obviously saw Nathaniel Lowe and Bo Naylor or Josh Naylor and all these guys move, and the prices weren't really that high. But you're looking at the contracts and you're looking at a lot of other things, and you're saying, okay, it kind of makes sense as to why. And if you're talking about Jarren Duran, I think you are having to consider Jones, but the likelihood of this, I think, is low unless the Red Sox made the Pirates an offer they couldn't refuse. I think that's what they meant. And I touched on that right after all that news came out, where I think that's what the Pirates meant when they were making Keller and Jones available, is it would have to be a blowaway offer, especially for Jones. Now, for Keller, you're thinking on the side of, okay, you're shedding his salary, you're probably getting some controllable young assets back, and then that would open up some time for you to go out in free agency or even trade and acquire somebody a little more expensive. Again, going back to those financial restrictions that the owner places on the team himself, and baseball in a way, but that's a whole different conversation. But I did think it was noteworthy to talk about this, because I do think that you have to at least think about it, because you have a guy like Bubba Chandler, who we're about to talk about, that could debut this year. You have guys like Thomas Harrington that are highly praised across the league. You look at Xander Muth is another player down the line that I think you can consider, Anthony Solometto. So they have the prospect capital pitching wise to maybe be able to survive one of these moves, but I wouldn't jump at a move just for the sake of doing it. I think it would have to be the perfect move. It would have to be some kind of corner outfielder that's immediately going to come in and make an impact on this team that also has plenty of years of control. And Jarren Duran fits that bill. So is that something that the Pirates would be interested in? Is that something the Red Sox would be interested in? Maybe we circle back to it, because there's still a lot of time in the offseason, folks. It's late December. You still have all of January and presumably all of February and March before the season even starts. So the Pirates have plenty of time to figure this out, but they're going to go into next season as well with another potential Rookie of the Year pitcher on their hands, and Bubba Chandler, who's received some very good recognition from MLB.com. We're going to talk about Bubba Chandler and why I think it's not completely out of the cards that we could see him in a Pittsburgh Pirates uniform in 2025 next on Locked On Pirates. Alrighty, everybody, and welcome back to the final part of today's episode of Locked On Pirates here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates. And your Pittsburgh Pirates are going to go into 2025 with expectations. They are going to have expectations placed on them by media. They're going to have expectations placed on them by me. And it will go full team, that will go players, that will go everybody, in coaches, management, all the way up and down. And a guy and a player that I have a lot of expectations for in 2025 is Bubba Chandler, who was named the Pirates breakout prospect via MLB.com. And it's really no secret that he was arguably the best prospect that the Pirates had in 2024 and will continue to be the top prospect for this team moving forward, and has a very, very good shot of making his debut in 2025. Sports Illustrated gave him some flowers as well, saying that he had a very, very, very good season. MLB.com also said he wasn't exactly a secret to start the 2024 season as the Pirates' number 5 prospect, but he got stronger and stronger as the 2024 season went on and looked ready to pound down the big league door with his finish in AAA this year. They mentioned some of his stats, finishing the year with an impressive 11.1 K per 9 rate, 22.3 strikeout to walk rate, and a 3.37 xFIP. So you're starting to vault in. They even say vaulting him into the discussion of top pitching prospects in the game, and perhaps giving the Pirates confidence to trade Luis Ortiz this offseason. So when you're looking at these players, and especially these pitchers in the minor leagues, a lot of people will tend to look at ERA, and his ERA was still good. I mean, it was a 3.08, but 148 strikeouts over 119 innings. He played some in AA Altoona. He also played a lot in AAA Indianapolis. And I think obviously you're probably going to expect him to start in AAA Indianapolis when the year begins. But we saw last year in spring training that the Pirates show a willingness to reward a very good spring. And they did so with Jared Jones, slotting him right into the rotation, giving him his first start in the opening series against the Miami Marlins, where he struck out 10. And of course, the rest is history. Jared Jones had a phenomenal rookie year. you could see the same kind of thing with Bubba Chandler if he has a very strong spring, especially with moving on from Luis Ortiz. That does open up a spot in the rotation for a player like Bubba Chandler, who the Pirates have very high hopes on, who many pundits across all of baseball consider one of, if not the best right-handed pitching prospect in the game since Paul Skeens graduated and Jared Jones graduated and a lot of other strong righties graduated over in 2024. So the Pirates could very well be in the conversation again for a Rookie of the Year pitcher in Bubba Chandler, who, folks, I mean, this kid's just very, very good. It's hard. I don't know how to really describe it, but I don't think it's outlandish to see a player like Bubba Chandler come into the fold in 2025 and make an instant impact. Now, one thing I do want to take pause with and tell everybody is don't expect this to be like Paul Skeens every time. Anytime a rookie pitcher, even of the caliber of Bubba Chandler, comes up, I would say that Bubba Chandler has the opportunity to be great. I don't think he's generational by any means like Paul Skeens. So if he does come up in 2025, pause your expectations just a little bit and don't expect him to be Paul Skeens right away. I think you would expect from Bubba Chandler to be more of a Jared Jones type than be a Paul Skeens type right away. But in any other year, a Jared Jones type is in the rookie of the year conversation. Now, obviously this year it was between Skeens, Merrill, and Chourio, and Jackson Chourio and Jackson Merrill had phenomenal seasons, but Skeens literally had a historic rookie season. Bubba Chandler could go into next year as a front runner for that award in the National League. And there's reason for it. I mean, you look at what kind of player he's been and what he's been able to do. I mean, he's only vaulted up the boards in prospects. I mean, Baseball America has given him praise, MLB.com, pretty much Fangraphs, any big prospect ranking has Bubba Chandler higher than what he started in 2024, which means he got better. He's only going to continue to get better. And I do think the likelihood of him performing in Pittsburgh in 2025 is higher than not seeing him at all. And that means a lot because you add him into this rotation of what it is currently, Skeens, Keller, Jones, and then presumably a Bailey Falter type. Bubba Chandler doesn't even have to be asked to be one of the top guys in that rotation just yet. He can ease himself in. He can be a great fourth starter for this team. And that is a phenomenal problem to have. I mean, that is amazing to have. Now, he still has some things to work on. Some of the secondary pitches, I think you would like to see a little bit more from. The fastball is already very good. But if he can just continue to upgrade those secondary pitches and just be the guy he's been in the minor leagues since his career started down there, folks, the Pirates are going to have another very strong young pitcher on their hands in Bubba Chandler, and I think that his recognition is deserved. I think he will only continue to get recognition from these big markets like MLB.com, Baseball America, Fangraphs, etc. And honestly, if he comes up, I think I like his chances to win Rookie of the Year. I really do. That's how good this kid is, folks, and it's going to be a pleasure to hopefully watch him in 2025. Thank you all for tuning into this Sunday edition of Locked On Pirates here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates. My name is Ethan Smith. Follow me on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates. Find this show on YouTube and all of your audio platforms because it is free and available to you wherever you get your podcasts. Have a wonderful rest of your Sunday afternoon and evening. We'll see you again tomorrow. But until then, we'll see you on the flip side.